What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 166. We've got our 12-team college football playoff bracket. We're back to recap the SEC championship game, talk about staffing moves across the SEC after some coaches have been hired in the last week or week and a half. We've got a bunch of staffing moves in the SEC, so we got a bunch to get into tonight. This is a really fun time of year. We got obviously bowl matchup set, playoff matchup set, and then obviously the SEC season is come to a close. Still got some SEC matchups though in the playoff for sure. But wanted to dive in first to the SEC championship game, and not much to say other than it was all dogs in Atlanta. They had some friends at the game. They got barked at a lot. That's for sure. Dogs were barking all weekend in Atlanta. This was an absolute beatdown. It was decisive from the get-go. So tough weekend for me personally. But man, you got to give this Georgia team so much credit for the way they played. Really all year, but particularly in the second half of the season. How Kirby Smart's just continually coach these guys. I mean, their defense was solid in the first matchup against Alabama, but man, I mean, they have improved so much from their pass rush to their secondary. I mean, it was a dominant performance, about as dominant as it gets from Georgia's defense. They really turned up the heat on Ty Simpson, which obviously they weren't able to do in the first game. That's a big reason why Alabama converted 13 third downs in Athens, and then this time, I don't know the third down number, but it was nowhere even in that stratosphere. They had Ty Simpson uncomfortable all day long. Obviously turned Alabama over pretty early in the game. Were able to drive down when Alabama actually had one of their more decent drives of the game going. Ty Simpson threw an interception, and then Georgia was able to drive down and score, I believe, to make it 14-0 in this, I believe, second quarter. So, but yeah, man, just got to give these Dogs a lot of credit. They controlled time of possession. I mean, Alabama was -3 rushing yards. I mean, figuring sacks in there, but I think they only had about 20 yards on the ground with running backs, and Ty Simpson got sacked a good bit. I think it was -28 or something's what it ended up being. So you end up having negative rushing yards. That's not going to win you many games at all, especially against this Georgia team. But, I mean, I just came away super impressed with them. I think they're set up well for this playoff run. But just kind of want to get your thoughts on this Georgia team and then kind of what you saw from the Alabama standpoint too, and then I'll jump back in.
Yeah, I mean, you laid it out pretty well. Georgia just came in, was completely a different team than what we saw week 4. Obviously, we've talked about them ad nauseum, getting better and better in the second half of the season for sure. But I thought that the defense, like you said, played extremely well. A lot of the praise is going to come up front with I think they had 13 pressures, 3 sacks, but they only got to him 3 times. But man, they were making him run for his life. It seemed like all night. He was uncomfortable in the pocket, throwing off his back foot, like expecting the contact pretty quickly and throwing off of his back foot. I thought that shook him up for sure. But you got to tip your cap to Georgia's secondary, man, because they were playing lockdown defense. I mean, there was times where Ty had a little bit of time, but there was no throws to be made because Georgia's secondary was so – they were stuck to him like glue. I thought they played a phenomenal game. I mean, Alabama definitely helped them out at times with drop passes. That's uncharacteristic from an Alabama team. I believe I heard a stat today that said it was the most drops in a game since 2016. So, I mean, in 9 seasons, it's been the most drop passes they've had in a game. I mean, it definitely stood out. Dropped a touchdown pass. Not that I think it might have been a little too late for it to matter, but there was you nailed it, man. Ryan Williams had a chance to catch a touchdown pass, and he tried to catch it with his chest. You said last week he's not super confident with his hands, and he did. If he'd have turned his hands over and he'd have had a better chance of catching the ball. He might have still dropped it, but he had a better chance. But you're right, he kind of tried to use his chest to secure it. I thought that, that definitely played a factor in it, them stalling out drives and hurting drives. But on the flip side, Alabama's defense played really well. They held Georgia under 300 yards of total offense. It's not like they threw all over them. Outside of one drive, I think the longest drive they had was 57 yards. So they weren't just driving it up and down the field in Alabama. They were just taking their short field opportunities and capitalizing on them. They were 4 of 4 in the red zone. Had a block punt that set up short field. They ended up getting a touchdown out of. Had an interception that gave them a short field. They made every single mistake that Alabama made. They made them count. I thought that Gunnar Stockton played about as well as you'd want him to. They didn't really try to stretch the field too much. Their longest play from scrimmage was 19 yards. So you can't really be upset at the defense. It was just the offense wasn't putting them in great spots to go and execute. Alabama, that is. And then, like I said, on the flip side, Georgia, I said a few weeks ago, it doesn't look like they're running the ball extremely effectively, and you look at the box score, and they got 100-plus rushing yards. They just stick with it and stick with it. And they had a couple of bigger plays from the run game, but outside of probably 3 or 4 of them, it was just Bama's not executing when they needed to, and Georgia executing in every single facet of the game. Kirby said going into the game he felt like special teams would need to be a big part of this. It ended up obviously being a huge part early on in the game with the block punt. So I thought that it didn't go how I expected. Obviously, we know I picked Georgia to cover. I thought it was going to be a little bit better game, but Kirby is undefeated in rematches going back to his time in Alabama. In 2011, they played LSU. In the first game, LSU won 9-6. In the second game, national championship game, Alabama won 21-0. So the defense made adjustments, showed up. 2017 against Auburn. This was when he was at Georgia. Auburn won the first game 40-17, and then Georgia won the second game in the SEC championship 28-7. So defense showed up, stifled the offense. 2021 against Bama. First game they lost 41-24. Second game was in the national championship. Georgia won 33-18. 33 was a late pick. We're not counting that, but from allowing Bama to score 41 points, then 18 points. Then last year against Texas, they won the first game 30-15, and they also won the second game 22-19. And then this year against Bama, lost the first game 24-21. The second game they won 28-7. So Kirby Smart in rematches, the opposing offense is not going to perform the same way against Kirby in a rematch. They might still get him, but he's going to make it so much harder for them to do that. He is, I've said this a million times, he's the best in-game adjustment coach that I've seen outside of Nick Saban. We're talking about current active coaches. He's the best in-game adjustment coach I've seen, and he is the best coach at not letting something beat him twice. Whether it's the same team, a different team that runs similar schemes, he's not going to let the same thing beat him over and over again. He is hands down the best at that. I thought it showed phenomenally on Saturday because the game was really never in question. Alabama really couldn't move the ball. They went back, like you said, -3 rushing yards, but you take out the sacks. I think they had 28 rushing yards, so it just was back to what we saw 4 or 5 weeks ago with Bama struggling to run the ball. I know they were out some of their backs, but the passing game out of the backfield wasn't what it usually is. There were some drops, like 2 or 3 drops out of the backfield with some of their running backs that they had. So they weren't clicking on all cylinders. You could tell that Ty's not playing as confident as he was a month and a half ago. Really, since the Oklahoma game is what it seems. But I think that obviously you got to find a way to get Ty Simpson confidence back to where he was playing a month and a half ago. A lot easier said than done. I think that's a huge emphasis that the Alabama coaching staff is going to go into in this next week and a half, preparing them for their playoff game against Oklahoma. But I think, if he gets back there and he gets his swagger back and his confidence back, I think Alabama's a force to be reckoned with. But Georgia, man, they had him seeing ghosts, had him, like I said, thrown off his back foot and just had him uncomfortable in the pocket all night. And then offensively, they just – I said it last week in our predictions. I said the team that wins time of possession will win this game. Georgia dominated time of possession. Again, it's not that they were just driving up and down the field. They just made their drives count. Even when they had 5 or 6 play drives, they were taking 2 to 3 minutes off the clock every time, consistently getting positive yards, whether it was 2-3 yards at a time, whatever it was, and then they'd find a way to break a decent gain. So I think this Georgia team's getting hot at the right time. To me, they're my favorite to win the national championship going forward. I think they're third in the odds behind, obviously, Indiana and Ohio State. I think they're a plus 500, plus 550 line. I think that Georgia's probably the best team in the playoff right now. A complete team. I think Oklahoma's got the best defense, but I think as a whole team, Georgia's the best team that's in it. They're my favorite to win it, and obviously I'm excited to see here in about 3 weeks how they're going to fare off either against Ole Miss or Tulane.
Yeah, I mean, with Georgia, I want to spend time talking about Georgia first. They're the team that dominated, won this game, but kind of looking at Alabama, I thought you made a great point with Alabama's defense. I thought Alabama's defense played well enough for them to win the game.
Sure.
Obviously they can't do it by themselves, and you can't be abysmal in 2 of the 3 phases and expect to beat anybody decent, especially this Georgia team, the way they're playing right now. But kind of a point I want to make about field position, too, is, like you said, Georgia was under 300 total yards. They had their first drive was off the block punt, which you can't have happen. Kirby said it in pregame, a special teams play is going to come up big. Chris Fowler said it as it was happening.
Yeah, he called it.
He was like, you got to watch special teams, and bam, it gets blocked. So that drive started on the 21-yard line of Alabama. So obviously they scored, made it 7-0. A later drive, their own 43. I believe that was off the interception. 14-0 there, and then the other 2 touchdown drives they had were started on the Alabama 39, and then when Alabama went for it late, started on the Alabama 12. So, like I said, it was all of their drives were great field position. Mm-hmm. Then you flip it over on the Alabama side. Alabama's best field position of the day was starting on their own 25.
Yeah.
Like they were backed up all day long. And they never could flip field position. Even when they punted it, Alabama doesn't have a great punting game, a great special teams game. It's been a problem all year. So, they don't have a J.K. Scott or a James Burnup that can boot up the other side of the field like they used to. So that's been an issue and hurt some hidden yards in there that you lose in the game. But yeah, it was a big field position game. Georgia dominated that. Like I said, Alabama started inside their own 25 several times. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, their best starting field position was Woodring kicking it through the end zone and starting it on their own 25. So, yeah, it was just something that they could never get flipped in the game. And 2, I thought, obviously Georgia bringing a lot of pressure. I just thought, and I haven't criticized Ryan Grubb this year much. I've heard a lot of other people doing it. I thought some of it was a little unfair just because I thought this offense just has some flaws that makes a game really hard to call. But in this game in particular, I thought there just wasn't it felt like every pass play was so long developing. Now there was quite a few plays that had checkdowns, and he checked it down pretty much every single time. It felt like that it was a completion, was a check down.
Right.
Thought there was a few that he could have checked down and didn't. That could have been nice gains. You highlighted some drops in there that weren't easy plays, but like in these type of games, you got to go make some good plays. Like you may have to make some contested catches, and there was a couple there to be had that Alabama just didn't make. And I just thought there wasn't. The routes were too long developing. There wasn't enough kind of blitz beaters in there to nothing that was really outside of a running back check down. Nothing there to kind of alleviate that pressure from Georgia. So I thought that was something that, just didn't feel like there was much of an adjustment during the game. So, and like I said, too, in his defense a little bit, this offense has become – everybody's got a year of film on this offense now. It's very predictable. They can't run the ball very good. They don't have any downfield passing game, whether it be Ty Simpson's not hitting it, whether you've had a drop or two in there, whether the offensive line's not holding up long enough. For whatever reason, you don't have a downfield pass game. You don't have a running game. So you pretty much are just a drop back, short to intermediate pass game. That's all you have for the most part. So it becomes extremely, predictable to defend. And so that's why I've kind of had Ryan Groves back, because I thought the criticism wasn't totally fair. I know he's the offensive coordinator. It's going to fall on him. But I didn't think this was a particularly very good game for him at all. Curious to see what the adjustments are because Oklahoma, they're going to run that same type of game plan back. They're going to heat him up like a microwave, so you better get something to get the ball out.
Thomas is back too this game. He didn't play against Alabama last time, and he's arguably the best pass rusher in the conference.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I want to see what adjustments are made between this game and obviously the playoff game against Oklahoma. And, like you said, the key, man, they got to get his confidence back. If they could get any sort of running game would help, but I'm not really expecting that at this point. Maybe a little bit better, possibly. But, yeah, like you said, got to get his confidence back. He's just – I don't know if it's him overthinking. I don't know, but I noticed on the interception, too, it was like his footwork's not quite as crisp. I think he's maybe overthinking, just not ripping it. He's just not as confident, not seeing it as well. And, again, a lot of it is he's had a lot put on his plate. He's had more put on his plate than I think it's fair to say any quarterback in the country this year, just as far as what he's been asked to do. Not only pre-snap, but post-snap, with not much of a running game. I mean, he's had to do it all, basically. So it's some of the criticism's unfair, too, because it's like, man, this dude, he's a really good player, but he's not that type of player. Like, he can't do everything, you know what I mean? Like, I think he's a very good quarterback, but he's not a Joe Burrow. He's not he's not a Cam Newton. He can't do it all. So, getting his confidence back will be big for this playoff run. Obviously, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit, the bracket, and then we'll preview more next week. But yeah, you got to give all the credit to Georgia. Man, they were due for one of these SEC championship games against Alabama. They haven't beat them in the SEC championship game, so they were kind of due on that front. And I like what you said, though. I think this Georgia team is playing as good or better than anybody in the country, and they are going to be a very tough out. And like I said, they would probably be my favorite right now to win the whole thing. I love the way they're playing. And I thought their offensive game plan, too, was really very conservative, very safe. I think they just had so much confidence in their defense. It was like, hey, let's don't put the ball in harm's way. I liked them using Gunnar Stockton in the run game. Thought it was very effective at times to get some yards, pick up some first downs, make third downs manageable at times. But the bootlegs, the rolling him out of the pocket, hitting guys in the flat, they do that about as well as anybody. Thought it was really a pretty simple game plan, pretty conservative game plan, but it was very effective, and it was all they needed to get this win and obviously get them another SEC championship.
Yeah, they looked really good. Like we said, they're going to be tough to go against these next few weeks. We did want to touch on some new coaching hires in the SEC. I'll start with Auburn. Alex Golesh, he came on. He's been there 8 days now, 9 days, whatever it is. Brought Cody Burns on with him, familiar face to a lot of Auburn fans. Caught a touchdown pass in the 2010 national championship game. He was wide receivers coach and associate head coach and I believe co-offensive coordinator at USF. He's coming on to be the associate head coach here at Auburn. I don't know what other titles he's going to have and what other positions he's going to coach. As of right now, it's just been reported that he's going to be associate head coach. Coming over for quarterback coach and offensive coordinator is Joe Gordon. He was under Golesh at USF the last 3 years, being the offensive coordinator there. He was with Golesh at Iowa State. Obviously, Golesh was a position coach there. I believe he became an offensive coordinator. I could be wrong on that, though. But he was with Golesh there at Iowa State with Brock Purdy. So he coached Brock Purdy, and we know what he became. He was Mr. Irrelevant and became a Super Bowl playing quarterback 2 years later. Golesh said he's a much better coach than him. That Gordon is a much better coach than Golesh is what Golesh's words are. That he's elite level quarterback developer. So that's great news for Auburn because that has been a missed spot the last few years for sure. DJ Durkin was retained as defensive coordinator. He's also going to coach linebackers. Tyler Hudenick is coming over. He's going to be the run game coordinator and offensive line coach. And then the defensive assistant, Brad Wilson's coming over. He's following him from USF as well. And then Andrew Warsaw is coming over to be the GM at Auburn, who is the GM and chief of staff at USF as well. So some familiar faces, some guys that he trusts, and he said in his presser that he only wants elite guys that are bought into his system, that are a right fit for him. And I'll let you take away a couple more, like Florida and Arkansas and things along those lines.
Yeah, so I want to touch on John Summerall, some of his staff moves as far as his coordinators at Florida. Obviously, he's still about to start a playoff run with Tulane, so he'll be bouncing back both duties between Tulane and Florida. But
I don't think that's going to last too long either.
Probably not. No, didn't go very well against Ole Miss the first time, so maybe it'll be a little closer this time. But so his staff at Florida, bringing in GM David Caldwell's a guy that's got NFL experience, going to be the general manager there for him at Florida. Bringing in, I believe I mentioned this last podcast, but Brad White, Kentucky's defensive coordinator, is going to come to Florida for the same position under Summerall's staff. Obviously, they worked together at Kentucky, so some familiarity there. And then Buster Faulkner, Georgia Tech's offensive coordinator, had a lot of success with the Yellow Jackets over the past couple years. He's coming to be the offensive coordinator. And there was some talk, too, that I think they kind of had a package deal. Like if Summerall would have got the Auburn job, I think Faulkner was going to come be his OC there. So seemed to me they kind of had a deal in place to wherever Summerall landed, Florida, Auburn, Ole Miss or wherever, that he was going to come be the offensive coordinator. So some really nice moves, I think, for John Summerall so far, of guys with obviously heavy level Power 4 experience, SEC experience there. Wanted to talk about Lane Kiffin's staff a little bit as well. Charlie Weiss Jr., he's back at Ole Miss, going to help them for the playoff run, but he's going to join as offensive coordinator as he's been the last couple years under Lane Kiffin. A lot of Ole Miss's offensive staff is going to join him at LSU. And then the big one is him retaining Blake Baker. He was up for multiple group of 5 jobs, Tulane in particular. There was a lot of thought that Blake Baker might get the Tulane job, but he ends up staying put in Baton Rouge, one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. So that's a huge plus for Lane Kiffin and his first staff. And not sure how much longer he's going to have him, because I think he's going to be a hot name going forward as far as a head coach. But that's a really big, addition, I guess you could say, or a guy keeping on staff there at LSU and Blake Baker. And so Lane Kiffin's staff looks to be shaping up pretty good for his first season as well. And once some of those offensive staff members get done with Ole Miss's playoff run, a lot of them are going to join him at LSU. But I like both of those staff moves so far at both places, Florida and LSU. And like I said, guys getting SEC experience around them. Summerall getting veteran coordinators around him, I think will be a big plus for him in particular.
And Arkansas, Ryan Silverfield, he went out. He's got 2 offensive line coaches. He hired Marcus Johnson from Ohio State, and Jeff Myers brought over with him from Memphis. He's also keeping Tim Cramsey as his offensive coordinator, who was his offensive coordinator at Memphis all 4 years. And then Ron Roberts is leaving Florida as the defensive coordinator, who was not retained there, and he is expected to be the defensive coordinator for Arkansas under Silverfield. So there's more guys to still be hired, obviously, with that staff, but he hasn't been there but about a week, and so he's building his staff and getting guys that are familiar with the SEC. That's a big part of guys on your first staff, in my opinion, if you've never been part of the SEC as a head man, is getting as many guys as you can that's been around that type of level of football, SEC, Big Ten, things along those lines. So I think that Arkansas gets fantastic recruits. I mean, Satania, that's at Oklahoma now. He was at Arkansas last year. Taylon Green looked amazing. Rocket Sanders, before he went to South Carolina, was at Arkansas. Arkansas, they continually get good recruits. The coaching there is just what's left them behind, in my opinion. Obviously, they don't have quite the facilities and quite the NIL budget that some other teams in the league do. But man, they still are able to go get good ball players. So I'm excited to see what the Silverfield era in Arkansas is going to be like. Can't be much worse than it's been the last few years in Arkansas. So I expect some uptick for sure. I think the team is going to look a little bit different schematically. So I'm excited to see how that's going to look down there in Fayetteville.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit too about Will Stein. He's the new Kentucky head coach. He's bringing in Joe Sloan, the ex-LSU offensive coordinator under Brian Kelly, to be his new OC. Obviously, Will Stein's an offensive guy, very well regarded for his work at Oregon. But Joe Sloan was the offensive coordinator at LSU. He was the quarterback coach when Jaden Daniels was there. So a guy, again, with a lot of experience, a lot of SEC experience, I think will be helpful for Will Stein. Colin Klein, Texas A&M offensive coordinator, getting the Kansas State head coaching job. Obviously, that's his alma mater.
Allowed to coach through the playoffs? Are they allowing him to do that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I haven't heard either. I have to dig into that a little bit.
They're going to want him to stay through the playoffs. Texas A&M is going to want him to stay.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm going to guess that he probably is, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Obviously, he's a guy that's up-and-coming guy, was the OC at Kansas State before getting the A&M job. Yep. Obviously, Kansas State being his alma mater. So
he was electric on the field there. I used to play with him on PS3. He was electric.
Yeah, short yardage, man. He was he was dominant. So yeah. He's a big guy, but he's obviously Chris Kleiman's retiring there at Kansas State, so I'm sure that was a job that he had circled for a long time when he got into coaching, wanting that job. So that's a really cool opportunity for him.
The last two coaches for Kansas State have retired. Bill Snyder and the guy, I can't think of his name. The guy
Chris Kleiman, yeah.
Kleiman. Both of the last two coaches at Kansas State have retired. They have not been fired. They have retired and left on their own will. That is rare in any sports league, in any sports team. But in college football, for your last two coaches you've had the last 25 years, both of them have left on their own volition and retired and walked away from the game. That is a phenomenal job to be stepping into. Obviously, he's a younger guy. He's probably not going to coach there for 45 years. But it's showing that
if he does, he'll have a heck of a career there if he retires from there.
100%. It's just showing you, like, the expectations there, yes, they're high. You know, you're supposed to compete for the Big 12 championship and so on. They've won it a few years ago. You know, they beat Jalen Hurts when he was at Oklahoma. So it's a place that has storied success, maybe not on the national atmosphere, but definitely conference-wise. I think it's a phenomenal fit for him. Like you said, he played there, but he has a chance to go in and have some of the best job security out the gate because fans already love him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to be a great opportunity for him. And then did want to talk a little bit, too, about Billy Napier. Obviously getting the James Madison job. The James Madison's in the college football playoffs, so not a bad place for Billy Napier to land his next opportunity and see if he can work his way back up to the Power 5 if he so chooses. So not a bad landing spot there at all for Billy Napier. Couple more staffing moves I want to touch on kind of before we get into the playoff bracket. South Carolina's hiring Kendall Briles, the TCU offensive coordinator, obviously well regarded for the work he's done over the last probably decade or so. He's been the offensive coordinator now. So, they fired Mike Shula back earlier this season. So getting Kendall Briles to be the offensive coordinator there at South Carolina for Shane Beamer. Tennessee has fired defensive coordinator Tim Banks, which kind of was expected. Obviously, Tennessee defense has really struggled this year. Had a really good unit last year, but had a really rough year this year. According to On3, one of the names to watch is Ryan Walters, the Washington defensive coordinator. So named to keep an eye on there. Ole Miss is hiring East Carolina's John David Baker to be their new offensive coordinator with Charlie Weiss going to LSU. He was the co-OC under Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss just a couple years ago before he went to East Carolina. So a lot of familiarity there. I'm pretty sure then he worked with Pete Golding. ECU just had a top 15 offense in total offense this past season. So seems to be a really good hire there for Pete Golding. But that's about all the, I think, coaching news I had right now. Obviously, there will be a good bit more over the coming weeks as the playoffs kind of unfold and as we get towards the end of the college football season. But that's kind of just something we want to touch on right now. And really, now we want to transition to the college football playoff bracket and just want to get your thoughts on the bracket reveal on Sunday. I mean, to me, honestly, I was a little surprised, honestly. I think that the ultimate reveal ended up catching a lot of people by surprise. What did you think when you saw the 12-team bracket?
I think that they got it right. I think now, is it the best 12 teams? Probably not. Definitely think that Notre Dame being left out is justified. I'm hearing people say, well, look at the last 5 weeks. Notre Dame's a better football team than Alabama. Well, maybe the last 5 weeks, but that's not. We don't start playing the game at the first week of November. We start playing in end of August and beginning of September. That's when the games kick off. It's a whole body of work. And they're saying, well, yeah, Alabama's strength of schedule was better, but look at them the last 5 weeks. Well, if you are saying that Alabama's strength of schedule is better than Notre Dame's, and you agree with that because Notre Dame's is in the 40s and Alabama was 6, so they're top 10, and then you look at their regular season record and both of them finished 10-2, I would think that Alabama's the better team. Now, again, the last 5 weeks, yeah, they haven't been there on their best, on their A game. Alabama hasn't, but they've still found ways to win some of these games. They lost to Oklahoma, who is in the playoffs, and they lost to Georgia, obviously, but they had beat them earlier in the year. They got the best win on the season of any college football team this year. But if you're going to sit there and say that you know and you agree that Alabama has a better strength of schedule, and then you look at the regular season record and they're the same, then there's no argument there to be had, in my opinion. Now, where Notre Dame fans are justified, in my opinion, of being upset is that they had you ranked for 4 weeks ahead of Miami. For 4 straight weeks, you're ranked ahead of Miami. Both Miami and Notre Dame don't play, and then Miami jumps Notre Dame. Now, I think that the end result was correct. How they got there was all types of debauchery. It was botched from the very first reveal they had where Notre Dame was over Miami. If you would have had Miami over Notre Dame the whole time, I don't think this argument would have been happening. I don't think the argument's valid when you're talking about Notre Dame to Alabama. I think that is a bogus argument. They can argue with the wall for all I care because I ain't hearing it. Now, Notre Dame is definitely better than Tulane and JMU. I will stand on that. 2 group of 5s being in here is egregious. Texas, Vanderbilt, Notre Dame, BYU, all 4 of those teams are light years better than both of those, Tulane and JMU. Now, I get it. It's an underdog story. You want it to be in there, but when has the group of 5 ever performed well in the college football playoff? They haven't. We already saw Tulane and Ole Miss this year, and Tulane beat them by 4 possessions, beat them by 25. JMU's played 1 Power 4 school this year, and they lost by 2 touchdowns. Like, these games are not going to be good playoff caliber games the way they should be. That is what I'm hung up on. I get it. They're saying, well, that's the great part of college sports, the underdog story, blah, blah, blah. I get it, but if we're sitting here trying to have the best 12 teams, group of 5 has no reason to be in there. Vandy would beat the dog crap out of both of these teams by multiple possessions. Texas is the same way. BYU's the same way, and Notre Dame's the same way. I would say the best game between these 2 group of 4 schools or group of 5 schools and those 4 I just mentioned would be BYU, and I still think BYU wins by double-digit points. I think it's a bit ridiculous. I don't think it's so crazy that BYU was left out because both of their losses came from a top 4 ranked team, and they weren't close in either game earlier in the year. And Texas Tech settled for several field goals in their first meeting and still beat them by 30 or something close to that, and they dominated them. After the first drive, BYU could do nothing on offense. Texas A&M had that game in the bag. Texas A&M is a really good football team, but I don't think BYU has an argument here. But the other three, I don't think Texas has an argument either. But Vanderbilt and Notre Dame should 100% be pissed off that the two Group of Five schools are in over them, because those two teams are not better than Notre Dame and Vanderbilt, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't like the format. I agree what you said. Under the format that they have to use, I think they got it right. And like you said too, I understand Notre Dame being upset because you were ahead of Miami this whole time, but their reasoning was, well, it wasn't close enough for that head-to-head matter. But once BYU lost, they were back-to-back. Then the head-to-head became a deciding factor. So I think they were right to put Miami in over Notre Dame. They had literally almost identical resumes, strength of schedule, identical records, and Miami had the head-to-head. Now, I think Notre Dame is probably the better team right now, but you really have to go – you can't go off of eye test, really. You have to go off resume, and they played that game on the field in Miami – and Miami won. So I know it was early in the year.
Miami dominated that game.
Yeah, so, I mean, it ended up being close in the end, but Miami controlled that game. So, like I said, I would take Notre Dame now if they play tomorrow. But, like I said, you got identical resumes pretty much. And Miami had the head-to-head. So I get it. It should have been flip-flopped the entire time, and it wouldn't have been such a fuss. I honestly, like you said, two Group of Fives is egregious. I hate the format. I think Notre Dame is one of the best 12, honestly. I think if you just took the best 12, Notre Dame would be in. I think Notre Dame's a really good football team. But, again, I just think their argument and their frustration is in the wrong place. I mean, rather than fighting about Alabama for their spot, I mean, you had a chance to beat Miami. And the two Group of Fives are clogging up the last two spots. So it's like, to me, the frustration for Notre Dame is not located in the right place for me. Because honestly, whether you agreed with it or not, like the SEC runner-up, like Alabama wasn't dropping out of this. There's no way that Greg Sankey was going to allow the number one seed in the SEC for the regular season with 10 regular season wins, the best strength of schedule of anybody in the playoff field. There's no way, regardless of result of them playing an extra game, they were not falling out. Obviously, the committee made that clear by keeping them at number 9. And I heard a lot of, a lot of complaints. Well, Ohio State dropped a spot, but Alabama didn't. And I heard all these examples of pretty much every other conference loser has dropped in the past, but nobody brought up TCU a couple years ago. They stayed at number 3. They lost. So they didn't drop a spot. So it's really a case-by-case basis. It's a different committee every year, so it's hard to draw correlations between 2022 and 2025 or whatever. But
also you can't. You can't. I'm hearing all these people. Well, look back at Georgia in 2023. Look back at Auburn in 2017. It's a 4-team playoff. It's different.
Yeah,
it is different.
Yeah.
You have 8 more spots that you're arguing over. You're not arguing over one spot, the 4th spot. That is not happening. It is a completely different scenario. These people talking about 2014 to 2023, those are not even that's apples to oranges, man. You talk about last year and you want to compare it to this year, okay, I'll give it to you. Exactly. Whatever. Because it's the same. But 4-team playoff, dropping out of that to a 12-team is not the same. Because in 2017, if it had been a 12-team, Auburn would have been in, even though they lost the conference championship. In 2023, when Georgia lost the championship, their only loss on the year, and they dropped out, they would be in at the 5 or 6 spot. Like, it's ridiculous. I'll give you the FSU argument. I'll give it to you, but still, it was 2023 or 2022, whatever year it was, 2023. So it was the last year of the 14 playoff. If it was a 12-team format, FSU would have been in 2023. Like, I'm sick and tired of this because it's not the same. Like, people talking about the 4-team, it is a completely different argument. 100% completely different argument.
And I'll tell you what, I'm about to defend Auburn here, and you're going like, why you talk about Auburn in this thing? I heard Notre Dame. I heard somebody say, well, look how Alabama's played. This is a bunch of people in the media, like more than I can count, went, well, look how Alabama's played the last month. Yeah, Alabama hasn't played as good. No doubt Alabama's offense in particular hadn't played good. I think a big reason that is look at where the total defenses they played over the last month. LSU, Oklahoma, Auburn, Georgia. I think that's a reason for the offense slipping for a good part there. But I kept hearing, well, Alabama's they're not a playoff team the way they played the last few months, and then look how dominant Notre Dame's been. Somebody had the audacity to bring up their win over Navy, dominating Navy. No disrespect to Navy, but I'm like, well, yeah, and Alabama struggled with a 5-7 Auburn team. I've heard that 15 times over the last 3 days. 5-7, they struggled with a 5-7 Auburn team. Do we not remember Georgia being in Jordan-Hare Stadium this year?
Yep.
I believe Georgia was down 17-0. Am I right about that?
Almost. It should have been if we wouldn't have fumbled the ball.
That's right. Okay. Almost 17-0.
10-3 at half, though.
Point being, they barely made it out alive.
Yep.
Barely out of Jordan-Hare. Alabama won more comfortably than Georgia did in Jordan-Hare. I know it's different, earlier in the season. I get that. A&M didn't beat Auburn by very much.
Neither did Oklahoma.
Oklahoma had to get a truck full of sacks to beat Auburn by 7.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. All those teams are in the college football playoff. They barely beat Auburn, so we're going to knock Alabama for barely beating Auburn.
I'm with you. I heard somebody say that Notre Dame beating Navy was a better win than Alabama beating Auburn because they said Navy is better than Auburn. My ass, dude. My ass. And then they had you can believe what you want to believe. I know I'm an Auburn fan. You can believe what you want to believe. They said that Pitt was way better than Auburn, and it was a way better win. I'll give you that the Pitt win for Notre Dame is a better win, but it ain't a way better win. Personnel, Auburn's got them beat. Talent, Auburn's got them beat. Both Navy and Pitt by a landslide. And they're trying to say that Navy and Pitt are great games, better than what Alabama just played, but you just sit here and agree with me or agree with whoever's talking to you that the SEC and that Alabama had the better strength of schedule by 30-something slots than Notre Dame did, but then you're going to sit here and say that Navy's a better win than Auburn and that Pitt's a better win than Auburn? Get the hell out of my face with that. Like, I get that everybody in the SEC is not top tier, but it is by far the deepest conference that you get. You're in the Big Ten. You got 4 or 5 teams, really. You're not going to go play a Wisconsin team if you're Ohio State or Indiana or Oregon or Michigan and get taken down to the wire like Alabama and Georgia did with Auburn. It doesn't happen. Or like A&M did with South Carolina. Or like Alabama did with South Carolina. The middle-of-the-pack teams with the Nebraskas and the Wisconsin, it's not even a good game when you got the middle-of-the-pack teams in the SEC with South Carolina going against the number 1 team at the time in Texas A&M and then taking Bama down to the wire. It's completely different. Like the league is so much deeper. That's obviously why you have a stronger strength of schedule. You agree that they have a stronger strength of schedule, and then you turn around and say that the wins that they had are better when the strength of schedule clearly states that it's not. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was crazy to me. I mean, like I said, I don't see how you can, on one hand, prop Notre Dame's schedule up like that, specifically talking about the last month, and then you're dissing on Alabama's wins. And I know, like, standings-wise, Auburn was not one of the better teams in the SEC. Look at their losses, though. Georgia was their worst loss. They lost by 10.
Yep.
Well, if the dang call on the fumble doesn't happen, Auburn very well wins that game. Every other loss, I know they were 5-7. They lost by 7, 6, 10, 6, 7, 7, 7. Every game they were in, like
against Oklahoma, they win that game too. Like they're record-wise, yeah, horseshit. Product on the field-wise, better than anybody that Notre Dame played outside of Miami and Texas A&M. Which, guess what? They lost. Ridiculous.
So, anyways, I just thought the arguments were pretty funny there.
You know it's bad when I'm coming to Alabama's defense on things. I would love nothing
and I'm coming
more.
to Auburn's defense saying, hey, that's a better win than y'all are trying to give it credit for.
Exactly. Like, I am very much SEC biased. I get it. Like, we have an SEC podcast. That's what we do weekly. Like, we grew up in it. We love the SEC. We're biased towards the SEC. We think they're the best conference in college football, for sure.
Which we're right about.
100%. But last year when Alabama was 9-3, I was advocating for them not to make the playoffs, which they didn't, because I didn't think they deserved it.
This year, without a doubt, they deserved it. And you got me, the biggest Auburn fan. Like Bo Nix said in that interview he had a few weeks ago. Sometimes I hate Alabama more than I love Auburn. That couldn't be a truer fact for me as well. And I'm coming to defend Alabama and say, yes, they need to be in the playoffs when one of my favorite things is watching Alabama get left out of the playoffs, which hasn't happened very often. But I'm sitting here saying there is no way Alabama should be left out of the playoffs. That's how you know, like, it is egregious, these arguments that are being had. I think you nailed it on the head that the Notre Dame's frustrations are towards the wrong team. It should be towards the two group of fives and the committee and the system that we have to allow two group of fives to get in. I'll give you one, whatever, I'll give you one. But two is absolutely egregious.
I think, one of the biggest takeaways from this, particularly on Notre Dame, was this was really a shot from the committee. And Notre Dame's benefited a lot of times from not being in a conference. But to me, this was a shot to them saying, y'all need to be in a conference. I think this was... this felt like that kind of message from the committee to Notre Dame to me.
Well, I would agree with that, and I think that you're right on that for this season alone. But then they just signed a memorandum or whatever you want to call it, a contract essentially, that next year and on. So next year, if Notre Dame is ranked in the top 12, no matter what, they're getting in the college football playoffs. And if it is expanded to 16, which I hate, but I think that it's probably going to happen in the near future, that if they're ranked 13th or 14th, that they're automatically in the playoffs. They benefit more than anybody. They play by different rules than anybody in college football. I think there's two independents now, them and UConn, and UConn might even be in a conference now. I could be wrong on that, but I know that they are one of the few independents left. They definitely benefit from not being in a conference. This is the only year that they have never, in their a billion years of college football, this is the only year they've not benefited from it. They're going to go cry about it. But next year, in the years in the future, that they're going to get benefited again if they're in the top 12 without being in a conference, because they're automatically going to be in. And if it gets expanded, if they're 12th, 13th, to 14th, they're automatically in. So I'm tired of the woe is me from the Notre Dame crowd, because it's a little ridiculous. It's a little hypocritical, because they benefit more than other teams because they're out of a conference. Last year in the national championship game, Ohio State had to split their earnings that they got with the rest of the Big Ten, but Notre Dame got to take all 20 mil home. Like, cry me a river. I'm sick of the woe is me from the Notre Dame crowd.
Yeah, and I know they didn't vote on it because they're not in the conference, but I mean the five highest conference champions, all that. Like, if it was just best 12, they'd have been in. I think they are best 12, but like I said, the format really squeezed them out. It's what it was. Like I said, with Tulane and JMU being in there, that's what did it. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this bracket as a whole, and I kind of go through it a little bit. I know everybody listening has already seen it at this point, probably a bunch of times. But one seed, obviously Indiana winning the Big Ten. I mean, hats off to Kirk Cignetti for not only what he's done all year, getting that win against Ohio State. I mean,
scoreless in the second half.
He said it 2 years ago in his press. They were like, "Hey, how are you going to get guys up here?" He goes, "It's simple. I win. Google me." And by God, you better Google him, because the dude's 13-0. He's the number one seed in the college football playoff. So, I mean, mad hats off to him for that. So they're the one seed. On the same side of the bracket, the Big 12 champ, Texas Tech, is the 4 seed. And then on the other side of the bracket, the other two buys are Ohio State, 2 seed, Georgia, SEC champ, 3 seed. So Indiana will be matched up with the winner of the 8 and 9 seed, Oklahoma and Alabama. That game will be in Norman next Friday night, the 19th, 7 p.m. primetime. And then Oregon JMU is the 5-12 matchup. Winner will face Texas Tech in the quarterfinal. Then back down to the bottom half of the bracket, Ole Miss and Tulane, 6 and 11 seed. Rematch from earlier this year where Ole Miss blew them out of the water in Oxford. It's probably about to blow them out of the water again in Oxford. Winner plays Georgia. And then the 7 and 10 seed Texas A&M is hosting Miami. Winner goes on to play Ohio State. So I know, obviously, some of the favorites, Indiana, Georgia, Ohio State. Obviously, those are kind of the odds leaders to win it. Who's maybe, I've got one in particular that I like, but who's maybe somebody that's not quite, maybe not one of the top one or two favorites? Whose draw do you like the most in this playoff?
I think Texas Tech. I like that. To get to the national championship. To win it, I'm not sure, but to get to the national championship, I like Texas Tech. I like Texas Tech better than I like Oregon and JMU. Whoever they play, I think Texas Tech can get them. Man, their defense, they are legit on defense. And then you got Indiana, Oklahoma, or Alabama is who they'll face if they go to the semifinals. I think that it's a tough draw for Texas Tech, any three of those teams they play. But outside of my favorite, Georgia, I think that they probably have the best run to the playoffs when you talk about the best draw to who they're facing with how they're playing right now and how the teams that they potentially could face outside of Indiana are playing right now. What about you? I think the toughest is A&M, by the way.
Yeah, not for real. That's a tough one. I think the draw I like the most is probably Oregon.
Okay.
I think that 5 seed is such a sweet spot because you get matched up with the 12 seed in the first round, which normally you're going to be a very heavy favorite, which Oregon is in this game, 21.5 right now. And I think an interesting caveat, now we only have 1 year of sample size for the 12-team playoff, so it's not enough to say for sure. Every team with a bye last year lost. So that's something I'm going to be looking forward to this year when we get to the quarterfinals to see if that holds or if that, I don't want to say trend because it's only been 1 year, but I want to see if that becomes such a long layoff, if that becomes more of a negative than a positive. Maybe it'll be a couple years before you can really tell probably. But I just think Oregon with basically a warm-up game didn't have to play conference championship weekend, so they'll have 3 weeks off before the JMU game, gets a warm-up game that they're going to dust them off the field, and then they have nearly 2 weeks till the quarterfinal game. So I feel like they're going to be really fresh, but they're also going to be a little bit more in sync than maybe Texas Tech is, so that's something to watch. Even though I'm with you, I like Texas Tech a lot too. I think that side of the bracket's pretty favorable because you get Georgia and Ohio State on the other side, and Texas A&M, and Miami and Ole Miss and them. So that 4 or 5 seed I'm definitely watching, but I'm really curious to see though in those quarterfinals, do the teams with a bye, does that end up hurting them again, kind of like it did last year? Is that a trend that's going to continue, or is it going to kind of correct itself this year? I mean, I don't see all 4 of those losing again. I would be floored if that happened. But that's going to be definitely something interesting to watch. But I do think that 5 seed is a very nice spot to be in if you're the Oregon Ducks. And they've had a lot of injuries. So I think that Oregon-Texas Tech game could end up being one of the more fun games of this entire playoff.
And I know this hasn't been an argument point about the playoff format and the rankings, but going off what we just said about Notre Dame and Alabama, I think, me personally, I know we just said we're SEC biased, I think Georgia should have had the 2 seed. Now, they're on the same side of the bracket. Georgia probably gets a better draw in the quarterfinals than Ohio State does. But you talk about strength of schedule, Georgia's got that. They got the same record, and Georgia won the hardest conference championship game. I thought that they should be the 2 seed. I think that they're better than Ohio State, me personally. But I just, that's me. People want to talk about, well, look how they played in the conference championship game, talking about Alabama. Well, look how Ohio State played. That's the worst offensive performance Ohio State's had in like 10 years. One of the worst game plans they've had offensively in quite some time. Didn't score a single point in the second half. I know it was against the number 1 team or the number 2 team who was undefeated as well. I'm not saying anything like that. They're not playing a 5-17, blah, blah, blah. But Georgia, in my opinion, is better than both Indiana and Ohio State. I just thought personally that they should have jumped Ohio State. I know it wasn't going to happen because it was 1 versus 2, but I think that Georgia
when you talk about everything that we've laid out with Notre Dame and Alabama, I think that Georgia's resume is much better than Ohio State's. They won their conference championship. It's the same record. I thought they should have jumped to the 2 spot.
I thought they were going to be 2, honestly. I really did. But I will say this. Once I saw Ohio State was number 2 and they only fell from 1 to 2, I felt very good about Alabama's chances at that point when I saw that, when I was like, Ohio State only dropped a spot. I thought, personally, Alabama would probably slip to 10. I thought they would end up probably bumping Notre Dame up or Miami, whoever got in, and I thought they would bump Bama to 10. So that did surprise me a little bit, but when I saw Ohio State 2, I did feel, I was very confident about Alabama's chances, but when I saw that, I pretty much knew it was a lock at that point. I will say it is, with Ohio State being 2, Georgia 3, and that being a potential semifinal matchup, I really hope that happens because I think that would be so much fun. We saw these teams play in the semifinals a couple years ago. Obviously, 2 different teams now, but that matchup will be a lot of fun if we get it. But Ohio State's got a tough draw. Either the winner of A&M Miami, that's going to be one of the best talent rosters they've seen all year. I mean, Texas was a really good talent roster they've seen. Indiana, definitely the best team they've played, but from a talent perspective, A&M or Miami, the rosters that they can put on the field are going to be able to match up with Ohio State from that perspective. So that'll be a lot of fun to watch too. So I think there's some really intriguing matchups here. It's not going to be the most aesthetically pleasing, but Alabama and Oklahoma playing again. It was a very competitive game the first time. Now in Norman this time, that should be good. But we're going to go more in depth on these previews next week as far as the playoffs go, but we just kind of wanted to get an overview and talk about the bracket tonight. Obviously, recap the SEC title game and talk about some coaching moves. As I said earlier, I think we'll have a lot more coaching moves to talk about over the coming weeks as well. But I did want to mention before we wrap up, too, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Really helps us out. We'd really appreciate that. I've been meaning to say that a little bit earlier in the show, but hopefully everybody stuck around to hear me say it at the end. We appreciate that. TikTok channel's doing great as well. Be sure to follow us at Saturdays_SEC. We've been talking about and tweeting about all of the coaching moves around the SEC, staff moves and things like that. So really appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll catch you back next week to preview the first round of the college football playoff.
Thank you, guys. There's a reason the SEC has the most teams in the college